All right, so the next thing I'm going to show you is how you shade with two markers that are close in color. And there's actually a couple different ways that you can do that. So one way you can do it is you can get two markers that are similar in tone. And of course, I tested these on a scrap paper just to make sure they were pretty close. Another way you can do this is you can get a gray marker that's kind of a middle gray. So this one here, I believe, is 60% gray. And if you just look on the label, it will tell you. And you can do some shading with gray, and then you can add a color on top of that once the gray is dry. Or you could use your darker color as your shading color and then do the lighter color on top. So for the purposes of this one, I'm going to do it with the gray. And so what I'm going to do is work on his sweatshirt. So first thing I'm going to do is lay some shading where I know it would be a little bit darker. So back here, kind of in this collar area, probably along there as well. I'm going to leave kind of a highlighted area in the middle for the hoodie. Then down here, it's probably going to be darker under here. If you wanted to have kind of the feeling of a ripple in the hoodie, you could do something like that. I'm going to also darken the edges by the arms. And kind of underneath here would be a little bit darker. Now the sweatshirt isn't going to stay gray. I am going to add another color on top, and you'll be able to see some of this gray shading through that next layer that I'm going to add. I'm going to do a little here, and then his hands would probably be in here. Probably do something like this. All right. So then I'm going to let that dry for a minute, and then I'm going to put the orange over it. While I'm waiting for that, I'm going to do his pants, just a solid blue for now, and we're going to save the pants because I want to show you how to do some colored pencils on top. So we're just going to do a solid blue for now on the pants, and then we're going to come back to those in a few minutes. Okay, so now back to the hoodie. I'm going to grab that lighter orange, which was kind of the main color I wanted the hoodie to be anyway. I'm going to go over to my big side of it. And now I'm going to go right over all of those gray lines, but I'm also getting kind of everything here. Now this for sure will make the tip of your lighter colored marker dirty. So you're going to want to clean that off in a minute. It also, it depends what color you're making something, whether or not you want to use the gray or maybe the color just at a different shade. So when I'm doing something that's really light, like an orange, I may want to also go over it a second time. Now obviously if I did a really dark blue, you might not see that shading popping through as much. And then if I decided at this point that I did want to add just a little bit of a darker orange, I can still do that. I can do that kind of over the gray, and it'll just keep that nice and dull for me. So I think that's one thing that people don't always realize when it comes to illustration markers is that they are meant to be layered. That's how you get those kind of awesome colors and the more realistic looking colors, is they are meant to be layered. So now it kind of looks a little bit more like some shading here. I'm going to kind of go over those a little bit. And then in a couple minutes, we are going to talk about highlights and how you can bring back some of those nice little white highlights when you have these kind of drawings. All right. So we're going to finish up here in a minute with our illustration markers. I think we've learned a couple different ways to layer them and how to work with them. It's really important, like I said, that you use them in kind of one sweeping motion, especially when you're filling a large area with color. Remember, we tried to do some shading here as well. And then next thing we're going to talk about is how you can add a layer of colored pencil on top of your illustration markers to give one extra bit of detail. All right, so the last thing we're going to talk about is layering colored pencils on top of your illustration markers. And what's great about colored pencils is that you can usually find a bigger variety of whatever color you're looking for. And now I'm using Prismacolor pencils, which are definitely what you want to use if they're available. They have the best pigment in them, and they really are just the best colored pencils you could possibly get. So we're going to focus now on just the jeans for a minute. And we're going to work on adding some shading to the jeans with just some colored pencil. And so we have our blue illustration marker that we already laid down, and I've got a bunch of different shades here of blue to play with. So I'm going to start off with a lighter shade, and you'll notice I'm not holding my pencil like this. I back my hand up on the colored pencil, and I'm lightly adding on top. And now, you might not see it all right away, but it's there. I'll show you at the end. So I'm just kind of lightly layering a lighter blue in the middle areas, I guess you could say, of the legs. And then I'm going to grab my darker blue, which is a little bit closer to the color that the jeans were. And I'm going to add that in there. Now it's very subtle, but it's actually awesome and beautiful. And then I can grab my white colored pencil and just kind of add very lightly on top of that lighter blue. And adding the colored pencil in an area like the jeans is really smart because jeans have a texture, so it kind of gives you a little bit rougher of a texture look to them. And let's see, it might be a little bit easier to see like that. So now you can see there's a little bit more added there with some colored pencil. I'm going to also add a little bit of colored pencil to some areas on the face, but I wanted to show you another technique for adding a highlight. So you could always grab a white colored pencil and use that to add a highlight. So let's say I wanted a highlight on the shoe, right? It's just kind of bringing that back out. But another option is a white gel pen. And those work great as well. And those are going to be a little bit brighter of a highlight than the colored pencil. So it really just depends what you're going for. In a more cartoon style drawing, you may want to use the gel pen just because it's kind of a little bit more contrasty. And if you were doing something that you wanted to look a little bit more realistic, you might stick with the white colored pencil instead. So now we're going to move up back to the face area just a little bit. And I'm going to add a little bit more shading on the skin using some colored pencil. So I've got a lighter skin tone colored pencil here. And I want to add a little bit around the eyes. So I'm kind of going back where I added the dark. And I'm just kind of adding another value in there. I can also use this to give maybe the ears a little more detail as well. So you'll notice it's subtle, right? We're not totally changing the color. We don't want to change all of the work that we've done. But I just wanted you to realize that these materials are meant to be used together. So the illustration marker and your colored pencils can be used together in a really, really beautiful, beautiful way. All right, and then the last thing we're going to do real quick is head back over to the sweatshirt. So I want to definitely add a highlight on the sweatshirt because if we've got these kind of wrinkly areas, then we probably should have a highlight in the middle there. We probably have a little highlight here. So yeah, and now we'll zoom out a little bit so you can see the finished piece in its entirety. And you'll notice too, I purposefully chose to do the sweatshirt orange and the pants blue because opposite complementaries, right? So we know that those pop each other out. And then for AP art from here, I definitely would want to make sure there was some sort of background. And I could come in with some illustration marker and fill in a background. I could do some colored pencil background. I could also cut out this character and completely put him onto a different background. So just remembering all of those options that are there for you. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned how to work better with illustration markers and then how to add colored pencil as well.